Hey guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. You know why you're here. It's Man of Medan part 3 of our analysis series. So let's get straight into it. So of course, we see all of our characters get on board the Medan. And we have like a nice little setup here. I think you're playing, or at least I was in my playthrough, I was playing as Conrad when you're walking through. But we initially come to the first room where, we get to sort of have a little bit of a chat with the characters. But you know what? I just said, mate, like how I was playing as Conrad. Do you remember who you was playing as, like when you boarded the ship? Because obviously Conrad got away for you, didn't he?
You did. Oh my god, I can't remember who I was playing at. I think it might have been Julia, because if you looked at part 2, you would know that Brad's hiding on the Duke and Conrad escaped. So I've got a very skinny cast here, haven't I? I'm only with 3 people, and I think it was Julia. One thing that I really liked, by the way, was the fact that you can pick up a clue, and because you're a hostage at this point, Danny chucks it away, and I'm pretty sure you can lose a clue, and I think the right thing to do is to leave it. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, oh, cool. It's that's a very unique way of potentially making us lose our 100% record first try.
You know what? Because obviously I've been replaying it, and I do remember that. And of course, I know in my original playthrough, Brad was actually, he stayed on the Duke of Milan, so he was going to come on later on, which is, I assume, where you're able to pick it up. But I had no idea that was a clue. I thought it was just going to be one of those random objects. So goes to show how long it's been since I played it. But all good, all the same. But I mean, I've got to say, just before we get to the whole room section, like I talked about in part 1, it's just that I think that the whole ghost ship setting is fantastic in Medan. And I know that they've almost done something similar to Until Dawn, in a sense where they have the fixed camera. And then, of course, especially when you're in these tight-knit corridors, and you hear the metal banging, and just you can see rats running past. Atmospheric-wise, I think it's absolutely top draw. And the more I play this game, because obviously this is going to be a meaty part 3, isn't it? I'm starting to think that Man of Medan is a little bit underrated. I know going back to our ranking videos, I put Man of Medan last. I'm starting to shake on that a little bit. I feel like it might even move up to 3rd spot. But, yeah.
We'll have to revisit it, because I completely agree. I think it's an absolutely fantastic game with maybe the best branching. It's between that and House of Ashes for me. It's phenomenal. And I agree what you mean. The ghost ship setting is brilliant. I love ghost ships just as a setting in general. Very much reminds me of this film called The Triangle in 2009. If you guys haven't seen it, watching. But yeah, just the atmosphere of it, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, it really does well to capture, because at the end of the day, this is a horror game, right? And I think Man of Medan is potentially the scariest of the 4. I might be wrong in saying that, but I do think it nails it on the horror front, as well as just the ambience going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll wait till we've recovered Little Hope, just out of sheer fairness, But I think my original thinking at the minute is that I prefer the concept of Little Hope and some of the ideas of the doppelganger and stuff like that. But actually, in practice, I think Medan is actually hitting the mark in terms of horror, the setting, the choices, the branching. So I'm wobbling a little bit.
I do get you, and I think one of the reasons we yourself might have scored it harshly, and I think you're more in your right to, is the fact that, like you mentioned in the last episode, it does take us quite a while to get on this ghost ship. I looked at someone's playthrough to refresh on this game, and we're at the halfway point in this game. Now, when I remembered back, I swear, getting on the ghost ship, you're probably 35% through the game. It's not. You're literally at the 50% mark, which shows you how long you spend at the start on the Duke of Milan. And I do somewhat agree we needed to get on this ghost ship a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it's really that, isn't it? And then the whole, being able to potentially know what the twist was because you see the gas at the start of the prologue. But yeah, I thought I'd mention that because I think like come the end of like this little series, I feel like potentially there's some things that need jigging around, but I might have to revisit that Man of Medan Little Hope debate that we had at the start of the channel, mate. Because it is interesting, some of the things I'm thinking now. But anyway, we will obviously move into this room, which of course you can look around at this point and you can pick up various objects. One of which, notably, of course, is the newspaper, which hints at the Hodgson expedition that we learn about in House of Ashes, which is really cool because, again, I'm going to take a quick tangent here. You know how we've been talking about Easter eggs in The Devil in Me, what the Yellow Cross book means, and, you've got that whole, like, Cathar, sort of religious background. It sort of told me that it doesn't necessarily have to be events within the game. It could equally be that, these little clues are simply referring to a backstory of a potential game. So, like, that could well be Intercession, but that could be, like, the backstory. It's not necessarily something we get to play. But, yeah, I mean, let's just cut to the chase. We'll get to sort of, like, some main choices, mate. You have a situation where you can escape out of the room, and you can you can barricade the door or not, or is it like I think, what is it, barricade versus distract? I think. Do you remember what you did?
I think I went for barricade. I was like, yeah, we need to get out of here right away. I did, some spying on the pirates, and I really enjoyed the dialogue. You clearly get the impression that the group we're up against that have us hostage. Which, by the way, really dumb they didn't scout the room. There's just like a hole in the bottom. It's just like we're just free to escape, basically. But I really like the dynamic. You have Olsen, who's this really hot-headed leader who like has a go at the others. You've got Danny, who clearly like isn't happy with his leadership, constantly sniping at him. And you have Junior, who's like the little baby of the group, who's like, wait, these guys are our hostages? Like, so you clearly like from the get-go know that Junior's like the nicer of the three. Kind of way for me to like toot my own horn a little bit, but they're speaking in French, which, as you know, Jack, is what I did my degree on. I lived there to speak the language. So like, obviously you can have your subtitles on and that will tell you what they're saying anyway. But I just, really like the fact that I didn't need my subtitles. I could just literally like, understand it. And it just added that layer of, like fascination to me to why like I really like Man of Medan as a game. And I love the fact that our story's taking like an advancement here. Like, our distributor cap's been taken, right? And that is what our current goal is. So it's about getting that cap and leaving this ghost ship. So yeah, like at this point I was really intrigued, and it really like, there was enough meat on the bones for me to like, really be invested in the story.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, honestly, I did the exact same. I think I barricaded the door as well. And then of course it does bring about a heartbeat sequence when Junior does come in. Now, I've seen a lot online about how there's some people saying that they found the heartbeat sequences in Medan the most difficult in the entire series. And of course, mate, you're one with with heartbeat sequences. They are like your what's it called, your kryptonite. So like, did you struggle with them in this game, or like this particular one? Like,
that particular one, no, but as you will find out, I did struggle with some, which I will get into. But yeah, I had a little bit of a torrid time with the heartbeat sequences. I don't know why. It's funny because it's like, I tried to do music. You think I'd be all right at timing, but apparently I'm not.
But of course, yeah, I mean, I did, yeah, obviously we both did pass the sequence here, but I think it would be so amazing, obviously coming from your perspective, because there was 3 people. If you did fail that, we do know that Fliss can then just outright get separated. So like, if that was to happen in your gameplay, you'd have then just had like 2 people together, which I find absolutely insane. Like,
what did happen is that I think Fliss has to go down. I think she can volunteer to get it. I might be wrong in thinking that. So for me, she did go down and she did get caught. So I did have to. I had like, my group was severely like, like the majority of the members were gone. It was nuts.
Oh, I mean, when you like initially crawl through the hole and you like have the heartbeat sequence, I think if you fail it, like Junior can grab her there. But yeah, like you're absolutely right. Like she does ultimately get scripted to get split up later on anyway, because she tries to get the distributor cap. But yeah, like, I know for that bit in my gameplay, I'm pretty sure that because Brad can ultimately go down there with her as well. Don't know if that's scripted or not, I can't quite remember, but I know that he didn't get caught in my original playthrough, but like for this one, just a bit, for a little bit of fun, you have the choice as Conrad, and you've got like a little screw or like a little bolt in your hand, and it comes up like divert or distract. And I'm pretty sure I went for distract, and he threw it, and it hit Junior, or was it, no, Danny, I think, and then it just like rolls round in front of Brad. So like he then just follows the bolt, and then he just like sees Brad lying there. So like he's like in this gameplay, that in this playthrough, like he then went off with Fliss. It was like quite hilarious, like how literally it's so unfortunate that he's like rolled right in front of him. But also, you know what, I've actually missed a little bit here, mate, because in the build up to that sequence, like you can go in like a couple of rooms, and there was actually a jump scare that legitimately got me. Like I was quite surprised. Like you go into one of these rooms as Conrad, and you like go to look down this hole, and I think it's very Until Dawn like, with like the what was it called that jumps out the cupboard? Is it some sort of beaver or something like that? But like in this one, obviously it was like a rat that jumped out the hole, and it actually got me this time with like my headphones on. So I was like actually pleasantly surprised, because you think you just get immune to them at this point. So yeah, of course, you then get to play, or at least in my playthrough, I then got to play as Alex. And again, very interesting here. Something that I completely forgot is that you can just walk up to random items, and obviously in this game, I think Alex, when you're in the kitchen, you get to pick up a knife, and he then gets to stow that, which I think was really great, because it then comes up like bearing updated. But it happens later on as well. I think you get to pick one up with Fliss. I think was it a spanner of some sort. And the same with Brad, you get to pick a knife up as well. And it was just a really nice thing. I mean, of course, in House of Ashes, you get to pick up the med kit, stuff like that. And of course, in The Devil in Me, all the characters had items straight away, really. It was something that I completely forgot about Medan. And again, it's why I come back to like my sort of, it's like a sort of a renaissance of Medan, like my appreciation for it, because I forgot that you could pick up these items and sort of stow them, and they could have a big impact on the plot later. But the one thing I wanted to point out here that really stuck in my mind in my original playthrough was something Julia says, and she goes, "Oh, I feel like we've been here before. It's like we're going round in circles." And I know that Brad says something similar later on. And I was thinking, is this something to do with the plot? Almost like at the time I was thinking, are they somehow, almost like Little Hope in a way, like are they already dead? And these are like their spirits that are trapped, and they're just like wandering around this ship or something. But I was like, something seems a bit off there. But I don't think it really come to anything. But I don't know if that was like just a random bit of dialogue on their part, like whether it was actually going to have some intention later on, but it got cut. But did you say you didn't have this bit, mate, in your playthrough?
Nah, like I remember Julia and Alex wandering around. There's the bit in the kitchen where you've got like the manky food that's been molding away for decades. But yeah, and they had some really interesting dialogue, especially if you don't accept the proposal. It's really interesting. I certainly remember picking up the knife, but yeah, I do remember sort of their interactions being very much like Julia thinks she's seeing things, like, because she clearly starts, spoiler alert, guys, if you haven't played the game, this isn't the video for you, play it and then come back. But Julia clearly starts hallucinating, right? She's seeing things that Alex isn't. And this is the start of, very much the whole thing about what this shit is going on with the Manchurian gold, with the hallucinogenics, right? So it's just really interesting to see that like the cast are starting to get affected by this, and then it can, cause a bit of friction within the group or some disputes here and there. So yeah, like I very much, as we've discussed, that it kind of, the prologue very much, I wouldn't say spoils, but heavily implies it. That I just was like, yeah, well, clearly she's seeing things that he's not, but she's still right to see it, like voice it and, see it. I don't think she's wrong. So that is very much where I was with that, mate.
Yes, it was in that scene. So maybe you did hear it and you've forgotten about it or whatever. But yeah, maybe it's just the hallucination stuff starting to take effect. But yeah, she was definitely like, "Oh, I feel like I've been here before. We're walking around in circles." And I was just remember at the time thinking, "Oh, that's so odd," But I mean, the next bit I've got in my notes here is when you ultimately come to the coffin room, and again, like another little story time. So like paranoid Jack back in like summer 2019 who still had like Until Dawn as like in his head. There was just something about looking at the coffins where I was like, I genuinely worry that if I look at these coffins something's gonna jump out and kill me, which I feel like it almost harkens back to the whole Ashley thing, do you investigate the trapdoor, sort of. I think that was what it was. Now obviously I know that you can literally just go and look at them and you can open them and see what's inside them and stuff. But
I think as well, it very much we had a recent escape room last year where the ending of it involved opening up a coffin, right?
Oh,
a
yeah.
casket with Dracula inside. So yeah, I think we've had our fair share of opening up coffins that we could have heavily done without that scene. One thing that I really liked about this whole sequence though, mate, is that a lot of these rooms you can go into are ones that you see within the prologue with Joe and Charlie.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to recover the same ground, whilst it being very different, like one being very wary as it was, and then one being this really decayed, abandoned ship. I really thought that was just really epic and haunting, how you're in the same location but with two completely different vibes. I thought that was a really phenomenal touch by Supermassive Games there.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's something after this, and again, it could just be my memory failing me, but I played it and I was like, what? I do not remember this in my first playthrough. But like, I think you're still playing as Alex, I think. And you can go into like this room. I think you're walking through like the sick bay, and there's this little room that you go off and you can find some like aspirins in there. And you can like give one to Conrad, and he just outright takes one, and it's just like I don't think it's anything significant. It was just like this tiny little scene. I was thinking, wait, what? Because I know that there has been like added stuff to Man of Medan, and it's probably not this. It's probably like more towards the end, But I was like playing. I was like, what? Like this seems completely new to me. Like maybe I just completely missed it in my first playthrough. But yeah, I thought I'd give it like a little nod because do you remember that at all? Does it ring any bells?
I do, and for me, because I only had Alex and Julie really at this point, one thing that I found really interesting was the fact that Alex would examine it and say, oh no, that's way too out of date, and puts it back. So what a dick for not accepting it for himself, but unloading it on Conrad, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, I know. Like, so what, like, got to be like, what, 80-year-old aspirins at least?
One thing that I want to comment on, mate, a little bit in this sequence is, now we always bring it up in Supermassive Games. Now I think, we're praising this game heavily, but it's Supermassive Games. What would it be without a few glitches here and there? And I voiced this before in another video, but I will say it now that we are doing the Man of Medan analysis, that I played this game movie night mode with some friends where we all played a different character, and very much a few glitches would arise that didn't appear in my solo playthrough, but very much in my co-op one. I find the co-op ones to be, a lot more glitchy than the solo stories. But the first one is when you're in the med bay with that guy, like on the bed or whatever. I picked up a clipboard and it wasn't examining it, but I just had a flashlight, like looking in third person still. That was heavily glitched because you can even look at the clue. And the second one, which is the one I'm pretty sure you remember me saying, where the jump scares where you would go past the bathroom stalls and one would have like a corpse on it, and then when you get to the end and walk back, the corpse is supposed to vanish. It's really clever. It's quite eerie when you play it solo and it works. But when I played it co-op, that corpse just was still there. So I just had this zombie thing like sat on the toilet, and we were just aiming a flashlight at it, like, sup buddy? What's up, my G? What you doing? Now, like, I'm not going to be able to find footage for it, so sorry, future Liam, you're going to have to edit this, and like, you're not going to be able to find an appropriate clip for it. But still, like, it was a bit disheartening where I tried to show my friends a horror game and we were just sat there laughing at this, like, zombie shitting on the toilet. But oh well, what can you do?
There's the title of the video.
Yeah.
But yeah, zombie shitting on the... But yeah, no, honestly, yeah, like that's the thing. Like glitches, you love them, you hate them. Like that's obviously a good one, as long as it didn't break the game. Like in a bad way, like where you're sort of getting characters killed, like people did in The Devil in Me. But yeah, I mean, I think we obviously move on, and shortly after that, at least in my playthrough, Conrad, he obviously walks ahead. Like Sam was keen to in Until Dawn, but he just naturally gets split up from Julia and Alex. And it's at this point that we learn, because they start shouting Conrad, Conrad, that Olsen is right behind them, so he's now on their tail in the Medan. And this is the point where it then cuts to Fliss. Now, what I'll say is that in my original playthrough, Fliss was on her own with Danny. In this playthrough, I purposely got Brad to go on to the Medan with them, and obviously, as I said earlier, I purposely got it so that he was down with Fliss. So in this playthrough, Fliss and Brad were walking together. So I don't know if at this point, mate, you started to play as Brad. Obviously, I'm probably not the best to remember, but like, did you start to play as Brad at this point and board the Medan, or was you like still walking about with Fliss?
Still Fliss. Brad doesn't come until after this Fliss scene, I believe. But yeah, I had a solo Fliss experience here alongside Danny.
All right, fair. So okay, so it's going to be the same then. So obviously, yeah, we cut to Fliss. You do a little bit of walking around. There's a bit of a jump scare. You see like the orang Medan hat perfectly perched on some sort of pole, and there's a nice little bit here that again I'm gonna nod as like a little detail that I appreciate. It's when you're walking around a corner and there's like a picture frame that you go to look at. You hit A, you think, oh, I'm gonna see a premonition. It doesn't let you. Like Danny then just like knocks you, and then you have to play on. And then that's the scene you was on about, mate, like where like he starts to randomly flip out, bullets are fired, he then just legs it. And then of course, like, if you remember, you can then go back down that corridor and then look at the premonition. I just thought that was a really nice touch, and I wonder if like it caught a few people out, like whether they ultimately forgot about that picture, after the whole thing with Danny. And as well, I think that you, again, like I said earlier, you get to stow the knife as Fliss, and then it's really at this point, I mean, this is what happens obviously with just Fliss, but also in my playthrough with Fliss and Brad. In my current playthrough, this is where Fliss and Brad get split up, and then Brad has like the whole repeating hallways segment, almost like very PT like, where you just walking around, you can pick a bullet out of a corpse, and each time you go around it gets more grotesque. I think there's some like leeches or something that come out at one point. There's like the body of it, like, Alex, obviously like his dead brother, and it just like, it is a really nice just like little horror sequence. And of course Brad also then goes on to stow the spanner later on. It's a nice little example of that as well.
I like this scene because like I never had it in my blind playthrough, but it was the one that was heavily shown in the trailer. I heavily remember Brad walking through a hallway with all these zombie-esque hands going over him. So I was like very much heading into this game like, are we gonna get like a zombie experience? But now what I love is that is like a scene that you have to get by doing a certain path, by having Brad on the ship early. So it might not be one you even get, and it's like it's not even zombies because it's a hallucination, and I just found that fascinating.
But yeah, like another thing, obviously it was good for me here, like in this playthrough, I wouldn't have had it otherwise, but like you then obviously get a choice as Fliss when it cuts back to her, where it's like you can either save yourself or you can save Brad. Now, obviously, at the time, I was thinking, I'm going to save myself because I feel like this is a hallucination thing. I don't think that that's really Brad. So I naturally went to save myself, and of course, it paid off for me. But of course, in your playthrough, mate, Brad wasn't even with Fliss. So did you want to take the lead on what happens, when he comes aboard the Medan?
Yeah, so like obviously after Danny freaks out, runs off, Fliss is kind of just walking around by herself, and it cuts to Brad, and it's a really cool sequence if Brad hid on the Medan, because he kind of has a moment where he gets out his hiding spot, and then he has to pep talk himself. He's like, you can do this, and he's obviously the very shy character that Alex looks down on. So you really are rooting for Brad, like, come on, be the hero. And you get on the ship, you find the piece of jewelry that Julia's dropped, so you're on the right path. I believe they locked a door behind those, so Brad has to go a completely different way. And you can see all these fumes coming down the stairs, so you know that, like, Brad's about to hallucinate. And you get a really interesting sequence where he's in this area with, like, this locker room, and you can successfully get a gas mask, which is going to be key to later on if you could get that. But then Olsen very much appears in the same room as Brad, and you have to hide in a cubicle. Luckily, there wasn't any shitting zombies there as well. But a heartbeat sequence comes out, right? And I failed it, me being me. Maybe it was my controller, maybe it was me. But regardless, though, Olsen finds me, and you bolt it and run. Now, Brad, whether he can die or not, I don't think he can, but he has to escape. But it meant that I missed a load of clues. So with Danny pushing loads of clues out my hands, and Brad having to skip a whole room where you can look at frames and find more, like, clues about Orang Medan and stuff, I was like, well, I've probably missed about 15 already alone. So I was like, my first playthrough is going to be very barren on the clue front. But it's still really interesting that Brad had this whole, element where he runs away with a gas mask. And then it pretty much cuts back into what my favourite scene in the game might be, mate.
I mean, yeah, I'll let you take the lead on it, mate, if you want to carry on talking about the ballroom scene.
Oh, yeah. So, like, Fliss, obviously, she sees some jump scares of, like, zombie Brad and manages to, like, barricade herself in a room. And she turns around and clearly, she's tripping at this point. We don't really necessarily know this at this point, no. But you've got the most pristine, beautiful ballroom. It's not like the rest of the ship. Everything's golden and, like, red, and it looks incredible. But essentially, you walk through this room, and, yeah, like I say, it's pristine, it's beautiful. You're really fascinated. You want to look around and look at all the clues. Now, for any veteran players out there who know this, the key is to not spend too much time dilly-dallying around. You've got to pretty much go through where there's the casket behind, like, the curtains, and take a bit of fresh air. And this really helps you indicate kind of like what is going on in the ship if you haven't clocked on already, because the moment you go outside, look at the water a little bit, you get hit with that fresh air, you come back in, and the ballroom scene completely changes. It's not the same pristine room it once was. It's decrepit. It's like, there's like leaks everywhere. Like there's this little hanging electrical wire, rats everywhere. And then suddenly you don't have that pristine ballroom that probably once was there before. You just have this really decrepit room. And I just thought, like, the nature of it looked amazing. I don't know if you wanted to comment on it at all before I bring Brad back into the scene, mate.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this scene as well. And in my first playthrough, I did manage to get around quick enough to look at the clues and obviously to get out and, get the fresh air, which of course you then come in and, like you say, you see it all decrepit again. In this particular playthrough, though, I was purposely taking my time because I knew that this one was a timed sequence. I don't know if people know that. If you take too long, essentially you can miss out the whole thing, of going outside and seeing, the Manchurian gold. And then of course, like a bit of like the ceiling collapses, and then that's of course like when you get the whole Brad and Fliss coming together, and if they're hallucinating, they'll see different things. But one thing I did want to raise before we get to that is a clue that I'm gonna have to do a little bit of digging on this on the quiet. It's the ritual book that you find on the table, and I wrote some things down. The word cable stuck out to me. I think the fact as well, it said 3 women and 2 men, and of course we know that it's like usually a band of 5 that you play as in this game. And we know that there's a game, the Craven Man that's coming around the corner. Is it going to be like Wicker Man style? And because it's a ritual book, I was thinking, is this a potential clue regarding, season 2? So like, I've put a little pin in that because I'm going to almost like look back at that clue and see if there's anything that, can be taken out of it, or if there's any research that might be, useful as to gauge what the plot could be, or, any little detail, to be honest. But I mean, yeah, obviously we then have Brad and Fliss link up again. Now, in my original gameplay, I did not find the gas mask. So Brad was hallucinating, but Fliss wasn't because she naturally went and got some air. However, like in that situation, I'm pretty sure, was it that I was playing as Fliss and I had some QTEs where I had to like dodge Brad's attempts to stab her? I can't remember if it was me as Brad, like, and I just didn't stab, Fliss or whatever he was imagining. Either way, one of them runs off and they naturally get split up again. But I think it's just so cool in the fact that even like when they link up again, there's the potential for them to have their own scene, where they, the room starts to flood, and then you've got like the choice, like you've got to like break the hinges off, and you've got to go and look for something and then get Brad out. But like it could literally lead to one of them dying. So it's just yet again another example of like how superb the branching is in Medan. What was that? Was that a similar experience for you, mate? Did you get the flooding scene at all?
I got away scot-free because Fliss had fresh air and Brad had the gas mask, so they just met up. But it's really interesting because, like, so they were fine. They were like, oh yeah, like, you're back kind of thing, and everything was dandy. But yeah, like I'm pretty sure you can have playthroughs where both are hallucinating and both see each other as a threat, where one sees the other but not the other one, like you just had there. It's really interesting and it's really cool because there's those premonitions, particularly the one where Fliss can look at the wall, that Danny prevents her from seeing that one time, where you'll see Brad as this like cloaked demon thing, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. It's like, what's that doing in the game? And it's like a hallucination, and if you don't get it, you might not think, like, you might be sat there thinking, when does that come in the game? Well, you might have missed it because that is basically only going to happen if Fliss is hallucinating. So it's just really interesting that these premonitions, whether you love or hate the fact they do it, can be misleading. But this was somewhat done in a genius way because, they don't have to hallucinate, but they might. And like you just said, Jack, it's off to the branching power of this game because it is actually phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, we'll now move on. We do temporarily go back to Alex and Julia, where you have a scene where they're getting... They're being followed by Olsen, and he uses a big hammer, hits the floor, they fall into some water, and you're playing as Julia. And of course there's an opportunity where you see Alex, and obviously she's seeing things, but she's like got this head under the water, and you get a choice, like, do you want him to carry on drowning, or whether you should let him go? Do you remember what you did?
I just know that both got out fine here, so I think I did the right thing, but I can't particularly remember what I did, mate.
I'm not gonna lie, I do think it's a little bit of a nothing choice. If you're listening and I'm wrong, let me know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that I told him to stop drowning him because at the time I was worried because I was hallucinating. I was thinking that could be Olsen drowning Alex, But I'm pretty sure in a subsequent playthrough, I just let it play out, and it didn't matter. Like, you then get out, and then next thing you know, presumably Olsen's then just like climbing out the water after you. So I think it could just be a bit of a nothing choice. Now, obviously, moving forward, we then resume with Conrad, and it's the famous Conrad chase sequence. Now, another point I'm going to raise here is about the QTEs, and I'm pretty sure. Thinking back now, I'm pretty sure this is the point where Conrad died for me, and it's to do with the QTEs, funnily enough, and I really like that it happened. But when you've got the initial bit where like he shuts the door and I think a few things get thrown at him, but there's a couple of QTEs where like he's got to like jump over some like beams and things because there's like holes in the floor, and like it hits you with a couple like a double QTE very quick. And I didn't expect it, and I'm pretty sure that's what got Conrad killed in my gameplay. It felt very like Until Dawn-esque, the QTEs, whereas I feel like in subsequent games I don't necessarily remember a lot of double sort of QTEs that are sort of come at you very fast. And also as well, like even if they do, it tends to be at the same two buttons, whereas with this game it feels like that it could just be any button you have to press in order to like get Conrad over. So naturally I did miss the bit where he climbs up the ladder. Obviously it's Fliss, we know that it's Fliss chasing him, and then he gets to the top. But what I would say, a little bit of a plot flaw here. So obviously he climbs up the ladder, he's outside, and we know that from Fliss going outside that the effects of the Manchurian gold, come off straight away. And he's outside for like a good 30 seconds to a minute with something following him. Surely the effects of the Manchurian gold would have wiped, and he would know that it's Fliss following him. Which is weird, because I know that when he's climbing up the ladder, you do hear like a faint Conrad, like someone calling him. But then when he gets to the top of the beam, he looks back and it's like this weird creature thing, and you get the choice like whether you jump or whether you confront the creature and naturally wait it out for it to turn into Fliss. But yeah, like a little bit of a flaw there, mate. But nonetheless, I thought it was still like a pretty darn good scene.
The flaw I thought you might have mentioned, I mean, it might not be one, so obviously, guys, correct us in the comments if we're wrong. Jack and I completely own the fact that we're not master researchers. You guys might know more than us. The nature of this channel is two mates having a chat about these games, right? But one thing I want to comment on is, wasn't Brad, together with Fliss, and now Fliss is here with Conrad? So, I'm a little confused as to how that happened, if Brad can get ditched, because I'm pretty sure, Brad would have been with Fliss at this point. But as we know, I don't have Conrad. Conrad escaped on the speedboat, so I never got this. But I have played playthroughs where this can happen. I, like you, Jack, failed a QTE. For me, it was going up the ladder. They were very challenging, I completely agree. So I got Conrad killed as he fell off the ladder here. But yeah, one thing I just want to roll back a little bit is just the beauty of the Sailor Girl sequence. I think if I was to think Man of Medan in a frame, I always think back to that Sailor Girl over his shoulder, then screaming, then becoming demonic, not being a Sailor Girl anymore. It's got to be one of the most iconic scenes in the game. I love the design of the Sailor Girl. I just thought she was really interesting. I just see a lot of people praise this scene, and I think rightfully so. It's just fantastic. Almost makes me a little sad that I left Conrad, to escape on the speedboat, because I missed out on this absolute phenomenal scene. But yeah, really intriguing. The chase scene, absolutely, incredible, challenging, as I mentioned. I've actually never been able to play the bit where he goes up and gets to make the choice, because like I say, the one time I did get that scene, Conrad fell off the ladder. One thing that we mentioned, I say we, this was heavily used since you know all about Curator's Cut, Jack. It's just the beauty of the scene, that you can play it from both perspectives. Not only that, but the fact that you can play it in co-op, right? And you can be playing with your mate at the same time, right?
That's it, yeah. You can literally be following Conrad, and then you'd obviously, as your mate, if you're playing as Conrad, he's running away thinking that it's some sort of creature. So you imagine then finishing the game and then getting together and talking about it afterwards, and you're saying, I was chasing you at one point, was you running away? It's oh, that's weird, must have been hallucinating. It is really clever.
No, that's it, mate. So honestly, hats off to that. This game probably offers the most from a co-op play perspective as well. So yeah, Man of Medan, absolute hidden gem, and the more we speak about it, the more we praise it. So yeah, maybe we did underestimate this absolute gem of a game, lad.
Yeah, I mean, we then move on to another chase sequence with Julia and Alex, who again obviously being followed by Olsen. We have a couple of choices here. Do you jump, or do you circle round? Again, I don't know if it's particularly important, but I vaulted over the shelf, and there's a couple of quick fire QTEs, which I do think can cost you here, because as the premonition shows, I think it's Alex, he can get caught by Olsen, and then he ultimately slams his head against the door, and that is a confirmed Alex death. Do you remember what happened for you, mate? Did you get through it all right?
Yeah, I both got through it fine, but I have definitely played a playthrough, or not played, watched someone do a playthrough that was beside me, and this person had Alex, die basically, because the door shut on them, so Olsen caught up. And while doing the research and the edits, I have actually seen that Julia can be the one to die here as well. There is a specific scene where Olsen snaps Julia's neck while everyone's looking through the glass door. So, you know, it doesn't have to be Alex, it can be Julia. Another thing we can praise Man of Medan for.
Yeah, exactly. You so that's like the rotation of characters, like because I'm pretty sure that actually it doesn't have to be Fliss that follows Conrad in the chase sequence. It can be Brad as well. Like just the way, yeah, like just the way they can like rotate characters for certain scenes. It's like it's amazing. I mean, ultimately the characters they go to like a little safe space, and you know they're about to have a chat. But we then obviously come to the end of part 3, and we get another curator scene. Now, just to almost get as much out the scene as possible, he offers you a hint. I did ask for the hint, and he gets his cards out again, and he's like, "Oh, I bet you're wondering now, like things aren't quite what they seem." And he does the little card trick thing, and obviously that wraps up this part of Man of Medan. So, I mean, have you got any final comments, mate, before we wrap up?
Not really. Like, I'm going to conserve a lot of my thoughts and facts and opinions for the final part. But yeah, no. I mean, this might be my favorite quarter of the game. The fact that we had the ballroom scene, the fact that, you know, the various branching and rotations that can happen, and yeah, like, not me, but you can have the Sailor Girl scene. So yeah, strong praise to this quarter. Part 3 out of the 4 might be the best one, mate.
Gotta say, I think I agree. I do think I agree. But yeah, let us know what your choices were, guys, in the comments section. Any comments as well. We love reading and replying to them. But yeah, we will see you next week for the final part of Man of Medan. Catch you then.
Bye, guys.